All right, well, now you're probably wondering, so what's the receiving method? And I'm going to give it to you. It is a 3-step method. Like I said, that's been based on a lot of research, a lot of science, and it started with what I understood as manifestation work. If you've ever done any law of attraction work, spiritual work, you've probably heard that if you ask, you will receive, that if you pray, God will answer your prayers. Anything like this is the type of information we normally get on how to allow and help from the divine, from the universe. The problem with ask and receive is that it has left out a very critical step, a missing step. The receiving method is a 3-part method that accounts for that missing step. So what's the missing step? Well, once you ask, before you can receive, you must do step number 2, which is release resistance. Resistance is what has been built up over time in you that holds those blocks, and it affects this secret field that I've talked about. And we're going to go into that in more detail. But before we do, I'd love for you to stop for a minute and just write down the receiving method so you can really anchor it in your mind and in your heart. First step is ask. Second step is release resistance. And the third step is receive. Okay, before we go any further, I want you to double, triple underline that second step, that missing step, releasing resistance. Circle it, put stars around it, because this is going to be a game changer. As you learn how to do this over the course of these trainings, you are going to likely say to me what most people say once they learn this, which is, why didn't anyone ever teach me this? And the answer is that we are all in a collective unconsciousness around this. We have all bought into this idea that we need to be in resistance. Now, that may not make sense to you, but let me explain to you what usually causes resistance. Thoughts like, I need to work hard to succeed. I don't want to be lazy. I don't want anyone to think that I'm needy or requiring too much help, right? If you've ever thought any of these things, you probably agree that most people would think that these are good thoughts to have, meaning not wanting to be needy or not wanting to require too much help is something that we all buy into as being a good thing. The challenge is that these are the sources of our resistance. Now, don't worry, by the end of this training, I'm not going to make you a sniveling, needy person, but what I am going to show you is how some of these beliefs are really blocking you from receiving as much help from the divine, from the universe, as is available to you. And that was absolutely the case with my client, Wendy. So Wendy had known me for years, and she started using the receiving method. In fact, for one reason, her parents had crossed over, her parents had passed away, and she wanted to be in communication with them. She had watched my own journey, which I'm going to share with you in a little while, and knew that my intuitive gifts had developed over time, that they weren't instantaneous. I probably was born with them, but I don't have a childhood where I was super intuitive. This came much later in life, and she wanted to grow that connection with the other side of the veil, specifically to talk to her mom and her dad. But as she used the receiving method, crazy things started to happen. First, she had decided to leave her corporate job and start a business. Now, this was something she had decided to do a couple of times, but ultimately always ended up going back to a corporate career because being an entrepreneur just felt too risky. This time, as she started to understand how all this worked, she committed to really launching the consulting business that she knew was right for her and would also give her the time freedom and the money freedom she had really desired. What happened through her journey was not just that she was able to start her business, but she had signed a $250,000 contract within the first 6 months, securing the income she needed to feel safe doing her business. And the best part was she connected with her daughter on a much deeper basis. Her daughter was just coming into her teen years, was starting to pull away, and she was able to reconnect with her in a way that she had started to wonder was even possible. And I get it because I've got teens too. She got more time on her hands and so many parts of her life improved. And I'm going to share more about Wendy's story as we go. But here was the linchpin. The linchpin in making all this happen was her deciding to take a vacation as she was starting her business. One of the reasons that this worked so well for Wendy, and I know it's going to work well for you if you apply what you learn in these trainings, is that it doesn't take a lot of shifts to actually start to move the dial on this resistance. You've been taught to resist receiving from a small age. I know that sounds crazy. Why would we do that? But we all do it. In fact, I have children and I've taught them to resist receiving despite even understanding all of this. But what happens is as we start to become conscious of this, we can really start to dissolve this resistance. And what this resistance does when it's in place is it creates a resistance in this secret field around us. It builds this energy around us that says, no, don't send good stuff in. What's going on with that? I know it's crazy, but we do it. We all do it. And what's so cool is you can start to dissolve the resistance in this secret field around you and invite in abundance. Let it be this beautiful, receptive field. And to make this make sense, I want to talk to you a little bit about how I discovered this secret field. So a few years ago, I had started teaching my clients about this concept of receiving. I had really started to see that at the heart of people not achieving their biggest goals or feeling blocked, really, we were always coming back to wounds in childhood that made people feel like they weren't enough or that they had to do everything on their own. And what happened with these beliefs is it kept the person from receiving all the gifts that were coming to them from the humans around them, from the universe, from the world in general. And as we started to get underneath this and start to dissolve this, the receiving energy was really what made a big difference in people's lives. So the seed was already planted. But what was interesting is if the person was trying to create a goal that involved money, I would focus on helping them learn how to receive money in lots of different ways. Or if they were looking to, find a new partner or grow the romance in their marriage, I would focus on them receiving in that particular category, let's say, or that lane. So it was very siloed. It was very like categories of receiving. And I thought that that's how it worked, that if we wanted more money to flow in, we need to open to receiving money. And if we wanted to allow more love in or more support, then we need to focus in those areas. And what I found out in 2019 was that was the completely wrong way to look at it, that there was actually a field and the field was either filled with resistance or it wasn't. It didn't matter if it was money or love or support. So 2 years ago, my father passed away, and it was a heartbreaking time for me. He died suddenly in his sleep, and he and I were very close. He lived close to me, and we spent a lot of time together, and I loved him deeply. And my mom had passed away 9 years earlier. Again, someone I loved deeply that I had been close with. And the advantage I had of grieving my father after my mother was I had had so many years behind me of grieving my mother that I actually knew what to expect. I knew that although the grieving was probably going to look differently, that it was going to take some time. And I knew that I wasn't in a position to support my business fully at the time. And what I chose to do was to really pull back on my business. I put a message out to my clients and let them know I was just putting it on hold for a couple of months so I could take care of myself so that I could take care of them better. Now, normally when you pull back on your business, conceptually, income's going to decrease and potentially clients are going to leave you. The exact opposite happened. Now, during that same time, I also found myself spending most of my days just being in this really open energy. I knew that I could communicate with my father, but I had to allow that communication in. So I put most of my focus on just being wide open, drinking in whatever was coming to me and allowing it to flow, blocking nothing so that I could be in this receptive state. And my father was communicating with me, and it was beautiful, and there was a lot of healing taking place. Well, what happened over the coming 6 months from when he passed until the fall came, which was time for me to do another launch, is that when I looked back, I realized that the money in my business had grown. The support I was getting was growing. Everything was improving, even though I was grieving. And suddenly I was sitting by my pool at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. I remember it so clearly. And it suddenly hit me. All of these pieces of my life were improving because I was in a giant state of receptivity. I had no resistance. I wasn't trying to create anything. I wasn't working hard. And it was all because I knew I needed to be in this receptive state. And as I closed my eyes and started to feel into what was different, I suddenly saw this field around me that was filled with this beautiful receptive energy. And I understood instantly, oh, where there had been resistance, now there was just receptivity. And that was what was making everything better. As I talked to my spirit guides about this, they confirmed that this field does exist and that we are either in a state of resistance or receiving. And the state that we're in really is what determines what can get through. Because as we ask for things, they start to arrive. But if we have resistance up, they can't get through. And this was a game changer for me. It helped me understand life and the planet and how to work with others in a completely different way. And it also led me to leave the business model I was doing and put all my energy into teaching the receiving method in the receiving school. So, that's how I came to know about the secret field. Now, within probably another month of that aha moment, that moment where I suddenly discovered something I had never been taught, never understood, my spirit guides told me, Patty, you need to start the receiving school and you need to teach the receiving method. And because I was in this receptive state, I did it. I put the message out. I told people that knew me, my clients, that I was no longer going to be doing the business coaching I had once done. I was going to be running the receiving school. And within a couple of weeks and just a few messages, we had 60 people enrolled. Now, since then, it's grown and grown and grown. And the abundance, the love in my life, my marriage has improved. My kids are happier. Everything has improved all because of this. That's why I'm so passionate about teaching it to you and you getting to access this same juice.